Mr. David Frulla, if did I pronounce that properly?
Yes, you are. Thank you.
Okay. Is a partner in the Washington, D.C. office of KelleyDrye. Mr. Frulla, you have 5 minutes to present your testimony.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kaufman, Ranking Member Velasquez, and members of the committee. I am David Frulla from KelleyDrye in Washington, D.C. I appear today personally, though I've long helped small businesses try to cope with federal rulemaking, including in over about a dozen RFA-related court cases, several times successfully. It is important testimony here today regarding the Regulatory Flexibility Act as Congress seeks to ensure federal regulations do not impede economic recovery and job creation. In summary, the RFA, along with its watchdog, the SBA's Office of Advocacy, have proven valuable in leveling the regulatory playing field for small businesses, nonprofit organizations, and governmental entities over the last 30 years. In short, the Office does a great job in its role as a liaison for small entities to the Federal Government, and it deserves the resources it needs to fulfill its mission, especially if that mission is going to be enhanced. More does need to be done, though, to ensure Federal regulations match the scope and scale of these small entities. As I will explain, certain RFA weaknesses have emerged since the Small Business Regulatory Enforcement and Fairness Act, or SBREFA, provided for judicial review of agency RFA analyses in 1996. The heart of RFA analyses are agencies' preparation and publication for notice and comment of an initial regulatory flexibility analysis, and then the preparation of a final regulatory flexibility analysis at the time of final rules published. Most importantly, these analyses should explore significant alternatives that reduce adverse impacts on small businesses, and the FERFA should explain why it rejects less flexible alternatives. In general, an agency can only avoid the RFA if it certifies the rule is not likely to have a significant impact on a substantial number of small entities. These Section 605B certifications have proved to be controversial. Importantly, courts have interpreted the RFA to be strictly procedural, and that limits its utility. A very deferential Administrative Procedure Act standard of review applies. It's an open question how much deference the expert SBA Office of Advocacy is entitled to when it disagrees, as it sometimes does, with agencies' analyses. And agencies have often been able to create their own ad hoc RFA standards that are contrary to SBA guidance and inform public input. Perhaps most significantly, an agency is not required to adopt any more flexible regulatory alternative, and courts generally defer. Whatever the cause, that outcome is not acceptable. Further, there is an ever-growing line of cases that find an agency need not comply with the RFA if the rule does not directly impact a universe of small entities. The origins of this construction are both sketchy and non-statutory. Also, there have been difficulties with Section 610 regulatory review. An extensive empirical analysis has shown that these large-scale regulatory reviews have not succeeded and may even have been counterproductive. This is particularly discouraging given the current legislative focus on retrospective reg review. SBA also included the panel requirement that the ranking member discussed. These panels have helped avoid ready, fire, aim regulatory outcomes. Fortunately, there are good ideas in play to amend the RFA, and I actually have one or two more of my own that I'm going to bring forward. It is important to give the Chief Counsel of the Office of Advocacy the authority to draft uniform implementing regulations for agencies to follow. For instance, EPA should not be able to, as it illogically does, assess the impact of a rule based on its impact on small business revenue without considering the profits needed to fund the change. H.R. 527 would provide for this more formal SBA rule. Small entity outreach should be expanded during the pre-proposed rule stage, along with increased use of SBREFA-type panels. President Obama himself has emphasized such proactive outreach. Include indirect effects. When, for instance, states merely act as regulatory intermediaries, there's no reason an agency can't assess the rule's impact on the small businesses that will ultimately have to comply. H.R. 527's foreseeability concept is on target. Regulatory review. Your proposed bill also enhances the 610 reg review process, and that should be strengthened, consistent with other legislative efforts to enhance retrospective reg review being considered in this Congress. The bill also understands the need for better understanding and minimization of cumulative regulatory impacts. You need to add teeth to the regulatory alternatives development process. Courts and agencies have both lost sight of the admonition in the RFA's legislative history that the law should be liberally construed to fulfill its purposes. It's not an easy legislative issue. If you'd permit just one more minute so I can finish up. Thank you. But here's what Congress can do. It can mandate the use of the best scientific, economic, and social information available in these analyses and let the SBA define what those terms mean. And it can provide for peer review in appropriate instances. Congress should consider developing a process where small entities could petition the Office of Advocacy to convene a peer review of an agency's RFA analyses, especially as they relate to alternatives. It shouldn't be automatic, but let the SBA take a look at that and decide where it's appropriate. And then these peer review results could be accorded judicial deference equal to the agency's own RFA analysis. Then you get a better playing field at the courts. And finally, opportunities for judicial review should be enhanced so they're effective. On the substantive matter, we just talked about the issue of deference, but also small business should not have to wait, as one of our clients did, 4 years for a court to conclude that the agency should have conducted an RFA analysis in the first place. Congress also needs to consider the heavy costs of federal litigation on small business. Thank you very much. I look forward to answering any questions you may have.
If